The emergency alarm shrieked through the small research vessel as Jared Keller frantically worked the controls. Red warning lights bathed the cockpit in an ominous glow, reflecting off the sweat beading on his forehead. Gravitational anomaly detected. Structural integrity compromised. Brace for impact, the ship's AI announced with infuriating calm. Jared's knuckles whitened as he gripped the manual controls. Override autopilot. Reroute emergency power to stabilizers. The ship shuddered violently as it entered Calera's atmosphere. Through the viewport, Jared could see the dense emerald canopy of the forbidden planet rushing up to meet him. He had known the risks when he'd accepted this unsanctioned research mission, but his scientific curiosity had outweighed caution. Now, plummeting toward the surface of a restricted world, he wondered if his thirst for knowledge would be his undoing. Impact in 5, 4. The AI's countdown was cut short as the ship slammed into the uppermost branches of ancient trees. The vessel caromed off massive trunks, each impact sending Jared lurching against his restraints. A deafening screech of tearing metal filled his ears as the ship's hull was breached. The final impact knocked him unconscious. When Jared awoke, sunlight was streaming through a jagged tear in the hull. His head throbbed, but a quick self-assessment revealed no serious injuries. The same couldn't be said for his ship. The control panel was dark, and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air. System status? Jared called out, his voice hoarse. No response. The AI was offline, along with most of the ship's systems. He unbuckled himself and gingerly rose to his feet, wincing at the protest from bruised ribs. Moving to the supply locker, he retrieved his expedition pack, grateful that the emergency protocols had at least kept the essential equipment intact. Jared slipped on his environment suit and stepped through the breach in the hull, emerging into the alien forest. He stood in momentary awe at the sight before him. The trees of Calera stretched skyward like cathedral spires, their massive trunks adorned with bioluminescent fungi. Strange, melodic calls echoed through the canopy as creatures unseen moved among the branches. The air was thick with humidity, carrying the scent of exotic blooms and rich, fertile soil. His scientific mind immediately began cataloging observations, but the practical part of him knew survival came first. The diagnostic scanner in his hand confirmed what he already suspected. The ship's power core was depleted. Without a new energy source, he'd be stranded. The scanner detected a faint energy signature several kilometers to the east. It could be a natural deposit of the rare element he needed, or it could be something else entirely. Either way, it was his best hope. Jared checked his equipment one last time. The translator module was functioning, as was his medical kit. With determination setting his jaw, he set off through the alien forest. The journey was arduous. Calera's gravity fluctuated unpredictably, sometimes making each step feel like trudging through mud, other times causing him to nearly bound into the air with each stride. The forest floor was a treacherous maze of root systems and bioluminescent pools of unknown liquid. Jared carefully took samples when possible, his scientist's instinct undimmed despite his predicament. As the alien sun began to set, the forest came alive with light. Every plant and fungus seemed to glow with its own inner radiance, transforming the landscape into a surreal wonderland of blues, purples, and greens. Jared would have been entranced if not for the increasing urgency of his situation. The energy signature grew stronger as he approached a massive clearing. At its center stood what appeared to be a natural rock formation, a series of towering crystalline spires that caught the last rays of sunlight and refracted them in dazzling patterns. But what drew Jared's attention was the creature that lay at the base of the largest spire. Jared froze, his breath catching in his throat. The beast was massive, easily the size of a small shuttle. Its serpentine body was covered in scales that seemed to shimmer between gold and deep crimson, like living metal. Great folded wings lay against its sides, and a crown of horns adorned its reptilian head. It was unmistakable, a sun fire dragon, the legendary apex predator of Calera, a creature so deadly that it was one of the primary reasons the planet had been declared off-limits. Jared's first instinct was to retreat quietly, to find another energy source or resign himself to being stranded. But something about the creature's posture gave him pause. Its breathing was labored, and its massive body occasionally shuddered with what appeared to be pain. Scientific curiosity warred with self-preservation. Slowly, Jared activated his scanner, aiming it at the creature. The results made his eyes widen. The energy signature he'd been tracking wasn't coming from the crystal formation. It was emanating from the dragon itself, or more specifically, from something embedded deep in its flank. Moving with extreme caution, Jared crept closer, using the scattered rocks for cover. The dragon's eyes were closed, but he knew from his research that sunfire dragons had exceptional senses. It could likely hear his heartbeat already. Yet made no move to attack. When he was within 20 meters, he could see the source of the dragon's distress. Protruding from its side, partly obscured by scales, was what appeared to be a metallic spike or thorn. The area around it was inflamed, the scales discolored. Whatever it was, it didn't belong there. Jared's mind raced through possibilities. Was it a weapon? A tracking device? Something else entirely? What was clear was that it was causing the creature immense pain. And despite everything he knew about the deadly nature of these beasts, Jared couldn't ignore his compassionate instincts. He made a decision that would change the course of his life and the history of Calera itself. He would try to help the dragon. Setting up his portable medical station behind a large rock, Jared prepared a powerful sedative designed for large xenofauna. It was a risk. He had no idea if the dragon's physiology would react well to the compound, or if the dose would be sufficient for a creature of this size. But doing nothing felt wrong on a fundamental level. With trembling hands, he loaded the sedative into an injection gun and took a deep breath. He would have one chance. If the dragon reacted violently, he would likely be incinerated in seconds. Emerging from his cover, Jared approached slowly, keeping his movements smooth and non-threatening. The dragon's eyes snapped open, iridescent orbs of amber that fixed on him with predatory intensity. A low rumble emanated from its throat. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jared said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand him, but hoping his tone might convey his intentions. "I'm here to help." The dragon's head rose slightly, nostrils flaring as it scented him. Its massive jaws parted, revealing rows of teeth like polished daggers. But it didn't strike. Whether from weakness or curiosity, it seemed to be observing him. Jared moved closer, step by careful step, the injection gun concealed behind his back. When he was within range, he raised his empty hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "This is going to sting," he murmured. Then in one fluid motion, he brought the injection gun forward and fired it at the dragon's neck, where the scales appeared thinnest. The creature roared, a sound so powerful it shook the ground beneath Jared's feet. Its tail lashed out, narrowly missing him as he dove behind a rock. For several heart-stopping moments, Jared was certain he'd made a fatal error. Then, gradually, the dragon's movement slowed. Its massive head drooped, and its eyelids grew heavy as the sedative took effect. Jared waited until he was certain the creature was fully sedated before approaching again. Up close, the dragon was even more magnificent, and the foreign object embedded in its side even more disturbing. It was clearly technological in nature, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Setting up his portable surgical equipment, Jared began the delicate process of removing the object. It was deeply embedded, having wormed its way between the dragon's armored scales to penetrate the flesh beneath. As he worked, Jared noticed something odd. The object seemed to have tiny, filament-like extensions that had spread throughout the surrounding tissue, like roots or tendrils. "What in the world are you?" he muttered, carefully tracing and severing each filament. The procedure took hours, the alien sun setting and rising again as Jared worked tirelessly, pausing only to administer additional sedative when the dragon showed signs of stirring. Finally, with a final tug, the object came free. It was roughly the size of Jared's palm, an intricate device of unknown metal and crystal components. Now disconnected from its host, the blue light faded, and it lay inert in Jared's hands. Jared quickly treated the wand with antibacterial agents and a regenerative compound, hoping they would work on the dragon's alien biology. Then he retreated to a safe distance to wait. The dragon would be waking soon, and despite his intervention, he had no illusions about its nature. It was still one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. As the sedative wore off, the dragon stirred. Its amber eyes opened, immediately finding Jared where he stood at the edge of the clearing. It rose to its full height, wings partially extending in an intimidating display. Jared held his breath, ready to run, though he knew escape would be futile if the creature decided to pursue him. But instead of attacking, the dragon simply observed him. Its head tilted slightly, as though puzzled. Then, to Jared's astonishment, it lowered its massive head in what almost appeared to be a gesture of acknowledgement before turning and padding silently into the forest, its scales catching the light like living flame. Jared exhaled shakily, clutching the strange technological thorn in his hand. He should have felt relief at surviving the encounter, but instead, he felt a nagging sense that he'd stumbled upon something far more significant than a simple rescue. Why had a clearly artificial device been embedded in a creature that inhabited a supposedly untouched planet? And what purpose had it served? His contemplation was interrupted by a sound from the forest. Not the heavy tread of the dragon returning, but the lighter footsteps of something humanoid. Jared quickly slipped the device into his pack and readied himself for another encounter. From the shadow of the massive trees emerged a figure that momentarily took Jared's breath away. She was tall and lithe, with skin that shimmered with a subtle iridescence like mother of pearl. Her features were humanoid but undeniably alien. High cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes of deep violet, and elegantly pointed ears. Her hair, white as starlight, was intricately braided and adorned with small crystals. She wore armor of an unfamiliar material that seemed to shift colors with her movements, and in her hand, she held a weapon that hummed with energy. She approached with the confidence of a predator, her violet eyes assessing him coldly. "Human," she said, the translator module in Jared's suit converting her musical language. "You trespass on sacred ground." Jared raised his hand slowly. "My name is Jared Keller. I'm a scientist. My ship crashed, and I'm stranded. I am Salana, warrior of the Azuran people and guardian of this sanctuary," she replied, her weapon not wavering. "You have violated our most sacred law by setting foot on Calera." "I didn't intend to," Jared began, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Intent matters not. The law is absolute." Her gaze flicked to the blood on his hands, dragon's blood from the surgery. Her expression hardened. "You have harmed a divine one. For this, the punishment is death." Before Jared could protest, a deafening roar shook the clearing. The Sunfire dragon burst from the forest, its massive form landing between Jared and the warrior woman. To Jared's shock, instead of attacking either of them, it positioned itself protectively in front of him, facing Salana with teeth bared. The warrior woman froze, her weapon dropping slightly as confusion overwhelmed her stern demeanor. "Impossible," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the translator. "The Divine One protects you." Jared seized the moment. "I didn't harm it. I helped it. There was a device embedded in its side, causing it pain. I removed it." Salana's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "No human can approach a Divine One and live, much less touch one. See for yourself," Jared said, gesturing to the dragon's flank where a healing wound was visible among the crimson scales. It was suffering. The dragon, as if understanding the conversation, turned its massive head to display the wound to Salana. The warrior approached cautiously, her weapon now lowered completely. She examined the healing incision with a look of growing bewilderment. "What manner of device?" she finally asked, turning back to Jared. Reluctantly, Jared retrieved the thorn-like object from his pack and held it out. It was embedded deep, with filaments spreading throughout its body. Solana's reaction was immediate and visceral. She recoiled as if Jared had offered her a venomous snake, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of shock and what appeared to be fear. "You possess old magic," she whispered. "Not magic. Science," Jared corrected. "This is technology, not mysticism." The warrior's expression hardened again. "You will come with me to the capital. The Council of Elders must judge this matter." She gestured with her weapon. "Both of you." Jared looked at the dragon, which had settled down beside him, its amber eyes watching Salana warily. "I don't think he takes orders from anyone." To both their surprise, the dragon rose and nudged Jared gently toward the forest path, clearly indicating its willingness to follow. Solana's composure cracked further, her bewilderment evident. "It seems he's decided to accompany us," Jared said, unable to keep a hint of wonder from his voice. "Do you have a name for him?" Salana hesitated. "In our tongue, he would be called Solaris, bearer of the sacred flame." She studied the interaction between human and dragon with undisguised confusion. "This defies all our teachings." "Perhaps your teachings are incomplete," Jared suggested, immediately regretting his words when Solana's expression darkened. "Watch your tongue, human. Your fate hangs by the thinnest thread." She gestured again with her weapon. "Move." The journey to Azure City is long and perilous. As they set off through the alien forest, Jared found himself in the strangest procession imaginable. A human scientist, an alien warrior, and a legendary dragon that, according to all known records, should have devoured them both on sight. Whatever lay ahead at the Azuran capital, Jared knew that his discovery had implications far beyond his original research mission. The journey through Kalera's wilderness was arduous and strange. Salana led them along paths invisible to Jared's eyes, navigating the bioluminescent forest with the confidence of one born to it. Solaris followed behind them, occasionally disappearing for short periods before returning, sometimes with the carcass of some unfortunate prey animal dangling from his jaws. Conversation was sparse and tense. Salana maintained a professional distance, answering Jared's questions about Kalera's environment with clipped, minimal responses. But he could sense her curiosity about him, and more importantly, about his unprecedented relationship with Solaris. On the third day, as they made camp in a small clearing, Salana finally broke her reserved silence. "How did you know?" she asked abruptly. Jared looked up from the small heating unit where he was preparing his rations. "Know what?" "That the Divine One, that Solaris was in pain, that you could approach him without being destroyed." Jared considered the question. "I didn't. It was a risk, but I couldn't leave a suffering creature without trying to help." "You risked your life for a beast that your kind considers a monster." Disbelief colored her voice. "Suffering is suffering," Jared replied simply. "It doesn't matter what form it takes." Salana was silent for a long moment, her violet eyes reflecting the bioluminescent light of the forest. "Our teachings say that the divine ones are to be worshipped from afar, that they are vessels of celestial judgment who punish the unworthy with cleansing fire." She glanced at Solaris, who lay curled at the edge of the clearing, his amber eyes half closed but watchful. "Yet he follows you like a bonded companion." "Perhaps there's more to your divine ones than your teachings suggest," Jared ventured carefully. Before Salana could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. Small stones bounced on the forest floor as the tremor intensified. Jared scrambled to secure his equipment, but Salana remained oddly calm. "Kalera breathes," she explained, seeing his alarm. "The planet's core is unstable, causing frequent seismic activity. It's why the gravity fluctuates." The tremor increased in intensity. Nearby, a massive tree groaned and began to tilt. Jared looked up in horror as it started to fall directly toward their camp. He lunged for Salana, intending to push her clear, but she was already moving, her reflexes far superior to his. What neither of them expected was Solaris's reaction. The dragon launched himself from his resting place, intercepting the falling tree with his massive body. Wood splintered against scales as Solaris took the full impact, shielding both human and Azuran from harm. The dragon shook off the broken fragments, apparently uninjured, and returned to his spot at the edge of the clearing, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Salana stared at the dragon, then at Jared, her composure finally cracking completely. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would he protect me? An Azuran hunter?" Jared looked at Solaris, who met his gaze with what seemed like intelligence and purpose. "I think there's a bond forming. Not just with me, but potentially with you too. He's not just a beast acting on instinct." "That cannot be," Salana insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "The Divine Ones are forces of nature, not companions." "Maybe that's what you've been taught," Jared said gently. "But is it what you're seeing with your own eyes?" Salana had no answer, and the rest of the evening passed in contemplative silence. But Jared noticed that she kept glancing at Solaris with new eyes that held the first seeds of doubt about her people's most fundamental beliefs. The following day brought them to the edge of a vast ravine. Far below, a river of what appeared to be molten silver flowed between jagged rocks. No bridge spanned the chasm, and Jared looked questioningly at Salana. "Now we see if the Divine One truly accepts you," she said, a hint of challenge in her voice. "The only way across is by wing." Jared looked at Solaris, understanding dawning. "You want me to ride him?" "If he permits it," Salana replied. "Among my people, to even suggest such a thing would be blasphemy worthy of death. No Azuran has ever mounted a Divine One." Jared approached Solaris cautiously. The dragon watched him with those intelligent amber eyes, head tilted slightly as if considering the unspoken request. Slowly, deliberately, Solaris lowered his massive body to the ground, extending one wing to form a ramp of sorts to his back. Heart-pounding, Jared carefully climbed onto the dragon's back, finding a secure position between two ridges of scales. The heat emanating from Solaris's body was intense, but not uncomfortable, like sitting near a well-banked fire. "What about you?" Jared called to Salana, who stood watching with an expression of mingled awe and discomfort. In answer, Solaris extended his wing again, clearly inviting the Azuran warrior to join them. Salana hesitated, conflict evident in every line of her body. To accept would be to challenge everything she had been taught about the Divine Ones. To refuse would leave her stranded. With visible reluctance, she approached and climbed aboard, positioning herself behind Jared. Her body was rigid with tension. "Hold on to me," Jared advised. "I don't think he'll let us fall, but better safe than sorry." Solana's arms reluctantly encircled his waist, just as Solaris launched himself into the air. The sensation was unlike anything Jared had experienced, the powerful muscles working beneath them, the rush of wind as massive wings beat the air, the ground falling away at dizzying speed. He heard Salana gasp behind him, her grip tightening reflexively. Solaris soared over the ravine, then continued onward, apparently deciding that aerial travel was more efficient than returning to the forest paths. The landscape of Calera spread below them like a living map, vast forests giving way to plains of tall, iridescent grass, crystalline formations rising like frozen fountains, and in the distance, the glittering spires of what must be Azure City. As they flew, Jared felt Salana gradually relax behind him, her initial fear giving way to wonder. When he glanced back, he saw her face transformed by an expression of pure joy, her white hair streaming in the wind. It was a glimpse of a different Salana, not the stern warrior, but a woman capable of experiencing delight. They landed in a small meadow several hours later, Solaris setting down with surprising gentleness. As they dismounted, Jared noticed Solana's hands lingering momentarily on the dragon's scales, a touch that seemed almost reverential. "Thank you," she said softly to Solaris, then caught herself, looking almost embarrassed at having addressed the dragon directly. "You enjoyed that," Jared observed with a smile. Solana's expression quickly resumed its professional mask. It was efficient transportation. It was freedom, Jared countered. I saw your face. A flash of vulnerability crossed her features before she turned away. We should continue. There's an ancient temple ahead that we can shelter in for the night. The temple was a marvel of alien architecture, a series of concentric rings carved from a single massive stone, open to the sky at the center. Its walls were covered in intricate carvings that emitted a soft, pulsing light in the growing darkness. Solaris settled outside, too large to enter the structure but maintaining his now familiar watchful presence. Inside, Jared examined the carvings with growing excitement. Even without understanding the Azuran language, the images were clear and shocking. They depicted humans, Azurans, and dragons living together, working together. Some scenes showed Azurans riding dragons, just as he and Salana had done today. Others showed humans and Azurans engaged in what appeared to be scientific or construction projects, with dragons assisting them. Salana, he called, pointing to the carvings. What is this place? She approached reluctantly, her expression guarded. It is the Temple of First Covenant, a place of contested history. Contested how? Jared pressed. Salana sighed, running her fingers over a carving that showed a human, an Azuran, and a dragon standing together in what appeared to be friendship. The temple predates our current religious doctrines. It tells a story that the Council of Elders considers heretical, that once, the three intelligent species of this solar system lived in harmony. Humans, Azurans, and dragons. She nodded. According to these carvings, we once shared knowledge and resources. The Divine Ones, the dragons, were partners, not distant deities. Her voice lowered to almost a whisper. But speaking of such things is forbidden. The official doctrine teaches that humans betrayed the covenant and were banished, and that the Divine Ones withdrew their direct presence from us as punishment, becoming distant judges of our worthiness. Jared's mind was racing. He pulled out the technological thorn he'd removed from Solaris. Could this be related? It's clearly designed to cause pain, maybe even to control. Salana stared at the device, conflict evident in her expression. I don't know. Our histories speak of a great war, after which the covenant was broken. But details are sparse, and much has been lost, or perhaps deliberately obscured, or rewritten, Jared suggested quietly. Before Salana could respond, a new voice echoed through the temple. Blasphemy and treason in one night, Salana. Your father will be most disappointed. They turned to see a tall Azuran male standing in the temple entrance. Like Salana, he wore armor that shifted colors with his movements, but his was adorned with additional insignia that suggested higher rank. His white hair was styled in elaborate braids with metal threaded through them, and his violet eyes held none of the doubt or warmth that had begun to show in Solanas. Varric, Salana acknowledged, her posture immediately stiffening. I'm escorting this human to the council as law requires. Varric's gaze shifted to Jared, contempt evident in every line of his face. And yet I find you sharing forbidden knowledge with this trespasser. His hand moved to the weapon at his side. The penalty for such an offense is clear. He removed a control device from one of the Divine Ones, Salana said quickly. The dragon now follows him. The council must hear of this. Varric's expression flickered between disbelief and rage. Impossible. The Divine Ones answered to no one, least of all a human. As if summoned by the discussion, a shadow fell across the temple entrance as Solaris positioned himself behind Varric, amber eyes gleaming in the darkness. The Azuran warrior spun, his weapon drawn in an instant. Upon seeing the massive dragon, he dropped to one knee, head bowed. Divine One, he murmured reverently, forgive the intrusion. Solaris ignored him completely, moving past to enter the temple, barely fitting through the entrance, and positioning himself beside Jared. The message was unmistakable. Varric rose slowly, his face a mask of confusion and growing anger. What trickery is this? What have you done to control it? No trickery, no control, Jared replied, placing a hand on Solaris's neck. I help him, and now we have a bond. Lies. Varric spat. The Divine Ones are beyond such base connections. In a fluid motion, he raised his weapon and fired at Jared. Everything happened at once. Solaris moved with impossible speed, his massive body shielding Jared from the energy blast. Salana drew her own weapon, aiming it at Varric. "Stand down," she commanded. "This man is under my protection and will face the judgment of the Council, not your personal vendetta." Varric's face contorted with rage. "You choose a human over your own kind? Over our sacred laws?" "I choose truth," Salana replied steadily, "however uncomfortable it may be." For a tense moment, it seemed Varric might attack again. Then, with a look of utter disgust, he lowered his weapon. "The Council will hear of this. You'll answer for your treason, Salana, as will your human pet." With that, he turned and stormed from the temple. When he was gone, Solana's composure cracked slightly, her hand trembling as she holstered her weapon. "That was Varric, second commander of the Temple Guard and my father's most trusted advisor. He will not let this stand." "Thank you," Jared said quietly, "for defending me." She met his gaze, her violet eyes troubled. "I defended the truth, whatever it may be." She glanced at Solaris, who had settled near them, his massive head resting on his forelegs. "And I begin to fear that much of what I've been taught is built on lies." That night, as Salana slept, Jared examined the technological Thorn more closely by the light of the bioluminescent carvings. Its structure was sophisticated, designed not just to cause pain, but to interface directly with the dragon's nervous system. It was a control device, cruel and efficient. But who had created it? And why? More importantly, how many more dragons on Calera might be suffering from similar implants, their natural behavior altered by artificial pain? As if sensing his thoughts, Solaris stirred, moving closer to rest his massive head near Jared. Those intelligent amber eyes seemed to convey understanding beyond what should be possible for a supposedly mindless beast. Jared placed a hand on the dragon's snout, feeling the heat radiating from the metallic scales. "We'll figure this out," he promised softly. "Whatever happened in the past, whatever lies have been told, we'll uncover the truth." As if in response, the bioluminescent carvings around them pulsed brighter, bathing the temple in blue-green light. It felt, in that moment, like the ancient stones themselves were awakening after a long slumber, ready to bear witness to truths long suppressed. They reached Azure City the following afternoon. From a distance, it was breathtaking, a series of crystalline spires rising from the jungle, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to be made of solidified light. As they drew closer, Jared could see that the entire city was built in harmony with the surrounding forest, the buildings incorporating living trees and plants in their structure. Their arrival caused immediate sensation. Azurans stopped in their tracks, staring in disbelief as Solaris walked calmly beside Jared and Salana. News of their approach spread quickly, and by the time they reached the central plaza, a crowd had gathered, keeping a respectful or fearful distance from the dragon. At the far end of the plaza stood a structure larger and more elaborate than the others. The council chamber, Salana explained in a low voice. Before it waited a group of Azurans in ornate ceremonial attire, their expressions ranging from shock to outrage. One stepped forward, a tall, distinguished male whose resemblance to Salana was unmistakable. "Daughter," he acknowledged, his voice cold. "You bring strangers to our sacred city." "Father," Salana replied with a formal bow. "I bring truth to our sacred city, however uncomfortable it may be." The elder Azuran's gaze shifted to Jared, then to Solaris, lingering on the healing wound visible on the dragon's flank. "So it is true. The Divine One follows the human." His tone made it clear he found the concept disturbing rather than miraculous. "This is Jared Keller, a scientist from Earth," Salana introduced. He removed a control device from the Divine One, a device of technological origin, not divine. Murmurs spread through the assembled council members. Jared stepped forward, producing the thorn-like device from his pack. "I found this embedded in Solaris's side. It was causing him immense pain, with filaments spreading throughout his nervous system. Varric pushed his way to the front of the group, his face contorted with barely controlled rage. Lies and sacrilege. This human seeks to undermine our most sacred traditions with trickery and false relics. It is no fake, Jared insisted, and I believe it's not the only one. Your divine ones may all be suffering, controlled through pain. The elder, Solana's father, raised a hand for silence. These are serious allegations that strike at the heart of our belief system. The full council must convene to hear this matter. He fixed Jared with a penetrating gaze. Until then, the human will be detained. Father, Solana objected. He has done nothing wrong. He saved a divine one from suffering. If his claims are true, her father replied, unmoved. If not, he has committed the gravest blasphemy imaginable. He gestured, and guards moved forward to surround Jared. Solaris reacted immediately, a low growl rumbling from his throat as he positioned himself protectively beside Jared. The guards halted, unwilling to approach the dragon. You see, Solana pressed. The Divine One protects him. Would this be possible if Jared spoke falsely? Her father's expression remained stern, but doubt had crept into his eyes. Very well. The human may remain free under your supervision, daughter, but he is restricted to the Temple of Archives until the council convenes. His gaze shifted to Solaris. As for the Divine One, it may go where it wills, as always. As they were escorted to the Temple of Archives, a vast structure filled with ancient scrolls and crystalline data storage devices, Jared whispered to Solana. Your father seemed troubled by my claims, but not entirely surprised. Solana nodded slightly. My father, Elder Talon, is keeper of the sealed records, histories that only the highest council members may access. If there is truth to your theory, he would know of it. The Temple of Archives became their home for the next 3 days. Jared spent the time poring over the accessible records with Solana's help, piecing together fragments of Azuran history. What emerged was a pattern of deliberate obfuscation, references to a great reformation, after which the relationship with the Divine Ones changed fundamentally, but no clear explanation of what had occurred. Solaris remained with them, occasionally leaving to hunt, but always returning. His presence in the city continued to cause a sensation, with many Azurans coming to the temple simply to gaze upon the dragon who had formed a bond with a human. Some were outraged, others curious, and a growing number seemed thoughtful, questioning. On the morning of the 4th day, they were summoned to the council chamber. The vast circular room was filled with Azuran elders and dignitaries. At the center stood a raised platform where Jared and Solana were directed to stand. Solaris positioned himself behind them, his massive presence impossible to ignore. Elder Talon rose from his seat at the head of the council. We are gathered to consider matters that strike at the foundation of our society. A human, Jared Keller, claims to have removed a control device from a Divine One, suggesting that our understanding of these sacred beings is fundamentally flawed. He gestured, and an assistant brought forward the Thorn-like device, now placed in a transparent containment field. Our technicians have examined this device. It is indeed of technological origin, of a design consistent with artifacts from the pre-Reformation era. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Jared glanced at Solana, who looked as surprised as he felt by her father's admission. However, Talon continued, raising his voice above the growing noise. This proves nothing about its purpose or origin. It could be a remnant of human attempts to control the Divine Ones, the very transgression that led to humanity's banishment from our world. Varric stepped forward, his face set in righteous anger. The evidence is clear, honored elders. This human has brought a forbidden artifact to our sacred city, attempting to undermine our faith with lies. The Divine One follows him through some form of technological control, not genuine bond. I call for the ultimate penalty. That's not true, Jared protested. I removed the device. I didn't create it. And Solaris follows me by choice, not control. Can you prove this? Talon challenged. I can't, Solana interjected, stepping forward. During our journey, I witnessed the Divine One, Solaris, protect both Jared and myself from danger. He permitted us to ride upon his back, something our own legends say has never occurred. These are not the actions of a controlled beast, but of an intelligent being making conscious choices. Loyalty born of freedom, not control, Jared added. But I believe the real question is, who created these devices in the first place? Who would benefit from making the dragons appear more violent and dangerous than they naturally are? The chamber fell silent as the implication hung in the air. It was Varric who broke the silence, his voice shaking with rage. This is intolerable. The humans suggest that we, the faithful guardians of Calera, would harm the divine ones we worship. He drew his weapon suddenly, aiming at Jared. I will not stand by while our most sacred traditions are slandered. What happened next occurred so quickly that few could follow it. Varric fired, the energy blast streaking toward Jared. Solaris lunged forward, deflecting the blast with his armored scales. Then, with terrifying speed, the dragon pinned Varric to the ground, massive jaws poised to deliver a fatal bite. Solaris, no, Jared shouted, rushing to the dragon's side. Don't kill him. To the astonishment of the assembled council, the dragon hesitated, then slowly backed away from the trembling Varric, returning to Jared's side. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some council members fled, others called for guards, while a few simply stood frozen in shock. Through it all, Elder Talon remained seated, his expression unreadable. When order was finally restored, with Varric taken into custody for his attack, Talon rose again. What we have witnessed is unprecedented. A divine one obeyed a direct command from a human, not to attack, but to show mercy. He turned to an elderly female council member beside him. Archivist Nara, you have studied the most ancient texts. Have you ever encountered such an account? The elderly Azuran rose slowly. Once, honored Talon. In the Chronicles of the First Covenant, it speaks of dragons, humans, and Azurans living in harmony, with dragons responding to verbal commands given by their bonded companions. Her voice quavered slightly. But these texts have long been considered allegorical, not historical. Or perhaps they were suppressed, Salana said boldly, stepping forward. Father, I request access to the sealed records. If we are to judge this matter fairly, we must know the full truth of our history. A tense silence fell over the chamber. For a long moment, Talon seemed to be waging an internal battle. Then, with a deep sigh, he reached beneath his robes and withdrew a crystalline key. Perhaps it is time, he said quietly, holding the key out to Salana. In the Vault of Ancestors lies a chamber containing records from before the Reformation. We have preserved them as our duty requires, but access has been restricted to the council leader alone for generations. Salana took the key reverently. Thank you, Father. The Vault of Ancestors lay beneath the council chamber, a vast repository of Azuran history carved directly into the bedrock of Calera. Jared, Salana, and a small group of council members, including Talon and Archivist Nara, descended into its depths. Solaris remained above, too large for the narrow passages. At the heart of the vault stood a sealed door of ancient metal, its surface covered in warning glyphs. With trembling hands, Salana inserted the crystalline key into a recess at the center. The door slid open with a groan of long-unused mechanisms, revealing a small chamber beyond. Inside, illuminated by soft bioluminescent light, lay a single pedestal supporting an ancient device, similar in design to the Thorn Jared had removed from Solaris, but larger and more complex. The control key, Talon said softly, his voice heavy with the weight of forbidden knowledge. The master device that commands all the thorns. You knew, Salana whispered, staring at her father in growing horror. Troubles you? Earth has responded to my beacon. They're sending a ship to take me home. Salana's violet eyes dimmed slightly, but she nodded with understanding. Of course. You have your own people, your own world. Your work here is done. Is it? Jared asked softly. There's so much more to discover, so much history to uncover. The relationship between our species is just beginning to heal after centuries of separation. What are you saying, Jared? I'm saying I could stay. As a scientific liaison, a bridge between our worlds. He stepped closer to her. If I be welcome. Solana's composure broke into a radiant smile. You would always be welcome. Solaris would never forgive me if I let you leave. Just Solaris? Jared asked, returning her smile. Before she could answer, a shadow fell over them as Solaris landed in the grove, sending young Azurans scrambling back in excitement rather than fear. The dragon approached Jared and Salana, his amber eyes conveying what seemed like amusement at their conversation. I think he approves, Salana said softly. Then it's settled, Jared replied. I'll inform Earth that I'm establishing the first permanent human research outpost on Calera, with the full blessing of the Azuran Council. The following morning, as the alien sun rose over Azure City, Jared, Salana, and Solaris stood together at the ancient temple of First Covenant. The bioluminescent carvings seemed brighter somehow, as if responding to the renewal of the bond they depicted. What happens now? Jared asked, watching as more dragons circled freely in the sky above the city. We rebuild, Salana replied, her hand finding his. Not just buildings or institutions, but trust. Between Azurans and dragons, between your people and mine. It won't be easy. Centuries of fear and separation leave deep scars. But it's possible, Jared said, reaching up to place his other hand on Solaris's neck. The dragon rumbled contentedly at his touch. Look at what happened here. The galaxy's deadliest predator becomes a friend and protector when freed from pain and control. If that's possible, anything is. Solaris stretched his massive wings, catching the morning light like living stained glass. Above them, more dragons appeared, drawn perhaps by some silent communication. They circled in formation, a living reminder of what had once been and what could be again. A second covenant, Salana murmured, her eyes reflecting the golden morning light. Built on truth this time, not control. As they stood together, human, Azuran, and dragon, watching the new day dawn over a world transformed, Jared thought about the simple act of compassion that had started it all. A scientist's instinct to ease suffering, even at personal risk. He couldn't have known then how far-reaching the consequences would be, freeing not just one dragon from pain, but an entire species from centuries of control and a civilization from the prison of its own distorted history. Some thorns, once removed, release more than pain. They release possibility. And standing there with Solana's hand in his and Solaris's warmth at his side, Jared knew that the greatest discoveries of his life were still to come, on this forbidden world that had somehow become home.